During the Leo speech, you can write questions already. The code is 584519. So it will be more useful then that you can provide questions during the presentation. And Leo, stage is yours.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. As you can see, my name is Leonardo. You can call me Leo. I'm very happy in being here. It's my second year in a row in Kaunas. I really like it here. And today I would like to talk about the Scrum Master interview. It's my own experience that I had this year being and interviewing people, and I would like to share some tips that I've learned throughout this experience. But before we start, how many of you here, just knowing my audience, how many of you here are Scrum Masters? Is there any Scrum Master? A few? Developers? A couple of them? Managers? A few managers? POs, BAs, product managers, business? Anyone from HR? Lovely. I did this session back in April, and there was no people from HR. Zero. And by the way, how many of you have been part of interview process in your organizations? And keep hands up. How many of you that have been part of the interviews that are not managers or in a management position or leadership positions? Oh, almost the same amount of people. That was interesting. Back in Dublin, there were 100-ish people in the room, and just 5 left the hands up. That means that only managers were doing interviews, or pretty much managers. Feel free. So a bit of context about my talk today is I'm a Scrum Master. Currently, I'm working for MasterCard in Dublin. Actually, I'm Brazilian. I've been spending the last 5 years in Dublin. And early this year, I just decided to move on in my career from some personal goals. And then I went through, I would say, a couple of interviews in different countries with different organizations. Organizations like Booking.com, King, the one that builds Candy Crush. They are more famous for that. MasterCard, where I'm currently, Typeform in Barcelona, MyTaxi, perhaps you know, it's similar to Uber. And I've seen very good things. I've interviewed people before, and I was in a position to be interviewed. And what I've experienced good things about some companies, assessing the skills of Scrum Masters, and other not so good. And that's what I would like to share with you today. But before we start, oh, sorry, there's one slide before that. Just about the Scrum Master role. The Scrum Master role was ranked among the top 10 promising jobs in America in 2017. And I just did a search on LinkedIn. That was the only source that I used. For the Scrum Master, the key Scrum Master, I got 90,000 jobs at this moment. And can kind of be similar, another 7,000 for Agile coaches. Just to see the high demand that we have now for Scrum Masters. Back in April, when I did this talk in the Agile Lean Ireland, there were around 13,000 for Scrum Master and around 4,000 for Agile coaches. That shows us 50% increase or more for this demand of Scrum Masters. And so the question is, how are we hiring them? How are we assessing those skills? And that's what I would like to talk to you. But before we start, I have a challenge for you. Just find a peer, can be anyone by you. And the challenge is gonna be split into two things. The first one, you're gonna have a minute to assess. Well, first of all, you need to define an interviewer and an interviewee. And the interviewer will have a minute to assess if the interviewee, the candidate, is good at maths in just 1 minute. Mathematics. So you have a minute to assess if she's good at maths, in a minute only. And then we go to the second part of the exercise. Can you pick up here? Yeah? So, a minute. Time box. Mm. You have 15 seconds left. Time's up. Time's up. So you can keep the interviewer and the interviewee, but now the challenge is different. Now you have to find out, to assess if your candidate is good at coaching. So you have a minute to find out and assess, say, would I hire this person as a coach? So questions and answers for that person, that's what you should do in another minute. Find out if the candidate is good at coaching. Another minute. Ten seconds left. Time's up. Have you finished? Kind of. So we had two challenges here. One to find out, to assess if that person, the candidate, is good at maths, and the other one, whether the candidate is good at coaching or not. Which one was easier? Or which one do you get money from your pocket, say, okay, I can hire, because I'm more certain that that person is good or not, and which one is harder?
I would say actually screening for coaching was easier for me
Mm-hmm.
than math because math is a hard skill, so I would need some proper tests, and with coaching I just ask good questions, and then I can understand if that person would be good with soft skills or not.
But were you assessing her skills for coaching, asking coaching questions, is it? Sorry.
Yeah, well, not coaching questions, but questions about coaching, about some situations.
Okay. Okay.
So I would hire her as a coach.
Good to know. Anyone else? We're going to talk about that.
I thought maths one was probably
Math was easier. Why?
because there are definite answers.
Definite answers, hard answers.
But if you can do trigonometry, then you can give me the right answers.
Yeah, exactly both cases. And there is a word for that. So when we were talking about maths, we were talking about hard skills. When we were talking about coaching, we were talking about soft skills. And what is the difference between both? As a Scrum Master, we need to have both. Scrum Master needs to know about Scrum, needs to know techniques, about estimation, or help out product owners to split stories and so on. Those are hard skills, things that are tangible and we can quantify. Possibly when you were assessing if that person who was good at math, perhaps we're asking questions, oh, how much is 100 divided by 7? And then increasing the level of difficulty of that question. And then you have, like, as I said, a hard answer. However, coaching requires more experience, perhaps because you have this developed. Because you have experience, then you can go for soft skills. But the soft skills are things that you develop. Whereas hard skills you learn, it's tangible, you can quantify. Hard skills are intangible and hard to quantify. Things that you develop. It's not that you read by the book. You need to develop yourself. Perhaps you answer because you know the theory, but when you put that person in a real situation, she will react differently than she answered the question. And that's what I would like to bring today. It's important to assess the knowledge of our Scrum Masters in Scrum, but how are you assessing the soft skills? Do our Scrum Masters need to have soft skills? Absolutely. Definitely. Currently, we see like Scrum Masters, he has to work with impediment, coaching, mentoring, teaching, dealing with conflicts within teams, organizations, and so on. This requires a lot of soft skills. But how are you assessing those soft skills with questions and answers in our interviews? And that's the point I want to cover today. So now I'm going to go deeper into my experience and what I've studied and tried to apply. How are you hiring currently? So basically, there are 4 main steps. There could be some variation, but there are pretty much 4 steps how our organizations are currently hiring Scrum Masters. By the way, you can apply these all to POs and so on. But I'm going to focus on Scrum Masters. So basically, we have a demand. We want to hire a Scrum Master. Then we come up with a job description. It can be the line manager, perhaps the HR. Someone comes up with the job description. After that, they'll gather some CVs in, and the HR will do the pre-screen interview, which is to call. Usually, the HR has a script that they go through that script and do the first assessment whether the Scrum Master can match some things or not. Usually, with the CV in, the line manager and some people assess that, and they either just give feedback, say, no, we don't want you to interview anymore, or bring it to the interview. And here, in the interview, it can have a few steps. If that candidate's not co-located, if we do something video conference up front, or bring on-site and do the interview on-site. We're going to explore that. And at the end, we make a decision. And this is usually done by the line manager, some Scrum Master lead, or a leadership or a management position. What I'm going to start exploring in those 4 points are now, I'm not saying that how we do is wrong, but what I want to bring is a different perspective and perhaps things that will just complement what we usually do, focusing on the soft skills. I do believe that for hard skills we do well. We have a lot of questions and we can validate that, but my focus today is going to be in soft skills. So going for the job description. First of all, what I've seen is the organizations will hire employees, but nowadays, mainly for IT and good professionals, the candidate is also hiring the organization. We are choosing the organizations that we want to work in. And that's very important. And the current organizations have to realize that the job description, it's their business card. It's the possibly first contact that a good candidate will have with the organization. So it's a sales pitch to attract good candidates. And so that's important, and I don't think that we are putting too much effort in this in creating a proper job spec, mainly for lack of knowledge or any other reason. And I want to bring some examples here. I got this from LinkedIn. You can search there for Scrum Master and start looking for the job titles, descriptions, responsibilities, and so on. You're going to find a lot of things. What I want to bring here is starting with job titles. Those ones I got from looking for a Scrum Master. And here we have an example. So they want to hire a Agile, Project Manager, and Scrum Master. There's a lack of clarity. Either you want to project manage, Agile Project Manager usually brings you to the traditional way of managing projects, or a Scrum Master. I'm not saying we're going to cover it later on. That Scrum Master will do a mix of, depends on which organization you are working on. You need to cope with some activities that usually Scrum Master, project managers deal, but we have to move towards a more agile environment, and this requires then Scrum Master skills. You need to cope with both, but bringing clarity to job title is important. It doesn't mean that it's because you're a Scrum Master, you may not deal with some activities that or responsibilities that are related to the project manager. The organizations are hiring us to change that. That's important. Here they want a Scrum Master and Product Owner, even though Scrum doesn't put anything specifically say you can share roles, but there's an agreement within the community that definitely you should avoid Scrum Master and Product Owner, because there is a conflict of interests, and we are humans. It's not like a cap that we just put on and put off and we change like this. Now I'm a Product Owner, now I'm Scrum Master. There will be a bias, and you're gonna lean towards one of them. And whenever you lean towards one of them, there is a lack of benefit of the other role. So not ideal at all. So then they are adverting things like that. Here, business analyst is Scrum Master. And one thing that I've seen frequently, one thing is your job title. The other thing is your role. Perhaps they are the same name. One example that I can use, do you know Ryanair? Do you know who is the PO of Ryanair, the really PO, the guy that has the final word about the product? Is the CEO, the guy that owns the company. He is the product owner. This is his role within the organization, but his job title is CEO. So different things. You can be an architect developer, you can be a project manager, Scrum Master. Yeah, it's the role that you are playing. However, I'm tending in favor to have if you're going to be Scrum Master, to have your job title as a Scrum Master, but it depends on the organization. Here you can see assistant manager as a Scrum Master. It gives a hint of that organization, how they see a Scrum Master. That's quite dangerous. And here in terms of being redundant, if you're a Scrum Master, theoretically, you are agile, or you know how to deal with agile methods and so on. So it's like redundant. Again, lack of clarity in the job titles. This is the first thing that we're going to read whenever we are looking for a job. And then we move on to the responsibilities. And again, as a Scrum Master, those are examples that I got from LinkedIn. You have to report the burn down daily, and you have to ensure you are responsible that the team is achieving the commitment in every sprint. And this goes to your talk just before mine. Where is the sense of share responsibility, collaboration, that value of we own our destiny, we can make our decisions? Someone is bossing here. They see like the Scrum Master as the team boss, or the assistant manager that will report to management. What about our self-organized teams? Scrum should be cross-functional, Scrum teams should be cross-functional and self-organized. If they have a Scrum Master that will do this. And I was asked this in one of the interviews that I had. How are we going to ensure that the team is delivering? So I won't do that. And the guy who was interviewing me said, looked at it like, how come? No, I'm going to bring tools and approach that will unveil, perhaps I will work with the team to unveil, to emerge the problems that we are having. But you as a manager have to help us out to remove those constraints and then to help us out to delivery. It's not me. If you put me, then you should change my job title to project manager. He didn't reply back. He didn't contact me after. So here, similar. So you are prioritizing tasks and ensuring that the team is delivering again, that you are bossing the team. What is the sense of tribe, the self-organization? Again, a lot of organizations that are very highly agile, but then they go, you have to handle the product backlog and requirements. And here is even worse for development and test teams. It's not even a Scrum team. They are hiring a Scrum Master for a Scrum team. And what about cross-functional? I have 2 different teams here. Totally against. The organization doesn't really understand what the basic Scrum is. So that's important. That's important, and can give a good hint of what type of environments you're gonna deal with. However, one of the pillars that the Agile and Scrum it's called transparency, and I do believe in transparency and honesty. And I saw this here from Jem. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn or whatever, I would advise you to do. He's a very good guy, very knowledgeable, and here's one of the jobs that he advertised on LinkedIn, and he was quite honest. If you see here with me, type of industry is going to work with this kind of framework. It's far from perfect, and you have to be aware that you're going to deal with waterfall and old school of project management. Which organization is going to hire you to be a Scrum Master where everything works perfectly? If everything works perfectly, they don't need Scrum Masters. Think about that. So you will probably need to cope with this kind of environments. You have to have a thick skin. You have to know how to deal. What about the dealing with people? So you have to have emotional intelligence to push, but sometimes you have just to go with the flow. This is something that, as Scrum Masters, we don't realize, or tends to have some time to realize that. We go to an organization and say, oh, it's very hard to change, but it's part of our job. So we will need to create a room for the change. It's part of our job. So the other one, I see a lot in job specs. We are a highly agile environment. Here, and then whenever you go there, it's totally different. But he's being honest. It's like, here we are not that disruptive. It's 3 out of 10. And those are the environments that are going to deal with. They are hiring us for that. Otherwise, they wouldn't hire us. What for? We have to deal with, cope with this kind of things. For those who, just to understand more about the Scrum Master role, have you ever read this white paper, The 8 Instance of Scrum Master from Barry Overing? If you don't, and mainly if you are a manager, please read it. This will perhaps open your mind of what a Scrum Master should be. We are seen as Scrum Masters a lot of this. Someone that will book meetings, someone that will ensure that the Scrum is literally like followed without like the idea of inspection and adoption, or the chairman, the guy that will just come, get the status, and then just deliver the status to management, or the admin, the guy who will ensure that Jira or TFS or any other tool is properly set up and updated. Even though we can cope and perhaps we do some activities of these responsibilities, what we should be aiming to is to move towards this. Scrum Master should have a lot of soft skills to be in this as a facilitator, coach, teacher. Remove impediments, that's quite important. Whenever we have impediments outside of the team boundary, we should be working with managers or whatever is needed to remove those impediments. Here is manager, but not of people. Manager of the process. Process, not people. The Scrum Master will never manage people. He will manage the process. He will tweak process to help out the team to self-organize, to create a sense of purpose, bring the purpose, ensure that the team has skills, and they are autonomous, they have autonomy to do their job. My goal as a Scrum Master is to be redundant. In other words, they shouldn't need me in some period of time. If they need me for 3, 4, 5 years, that means that I'm definitely not succeeding as a Scrum Master. As a Scrum Master, we need just to work towards, they can work themselves without us. That's the purpose. And then we move, this is the first tab, advertising the job. And then we go for this pre-screening. And this usually happens with the HR only. And here's the first add-on that I would bring is start involved with the team. So if you have a good candidate, that you have a CV, bring to the team. And when I mean the team, can be the team of, if we know that Scrum Master will work with that development team, bring that CV to them and ask them to assess this as well. If we don't have it defined, let's bring to the team that will work closely with this Scrum Master, or Scrum Masters, architects, managers as well, some developers, I don't know, people that will work closer to that guy initially. And I will later on explain why. Do we need like a long meeting to decide that? No. What the humans usually did in the past, thumbs up and thumbs down. So I assessed myself, got what I think that was important. We had a discussion, the HR can facilitate that, and I think we should hire him, we think we shouldn't, and just briefly get the main points for feedback, mainly if we say no, because then we can provide feedback to the candidate. Just that for the pre-screening. Then we move to the interview. To the interview, we are doing well. Questions, asking questions and getting new answers, validating the hard skills. But what I would here bring as an idea is to put our Scrum Masters in a real situation or in a simulation if it's not possible. What does it mean? Bring them on site, and I'll give an idea about video conferencing as well, if your interview is through video conferencing, and see them put in place the soft skills. See them dealing with conflict or facilitate a retrospective that something new emerged and they have to cope with that. It's easy to answer a question when we are in a normal pressure, but when we are under pressure and we have to cope with that, it's harder. I'm not saying to just invite the candidate to come and then suddenly say, now you have to facilitate the retrospective. No, please not. The experience of the candidate is also important, because remember, they are hiring you as well as a company. But bring the rules of the game up front. The person will not know that they will do, for example, facilitate a retrospective. However, bring some elements that he is not expecting and see how things go. Ideas, perhaps to facilitate a sprint planning or a sprint retrospective. I had to do that in a few of my interviews. One was, two were facilitating retrospectives. One was with a team of Scrum Masters, the other Agile codes. They were simulating, and they brought like different situations that I was not expecting, and they were assessing how I was dealing with that, mainly conflicts. But the other one that was a really, really good experience, the team who was supposed to work, I facilitated a real retrospective with them. Of course, you have to assess in terms of if you can bring, data sensitivity and things like that. However, it was a brilliant experience because they were hiring me. Again, goes back to your talk. They were deciding their own future. They were deciding if I had the values that they had. So they were hiring me, the team that I would work. And I will explain again why this is so important later on. Other ideas, backlog refinement, and see if that person can help out, perhaps in a situation we are not agreeing in estimation, or we need some support to break down the stories. Prioritization, we deal a lot with prioritization, mainly if you work with many teams. And what happens if two teams come to you and ask about, I need this, I need your support. What is the way that you usually prioritize your tasks as a Scrum Master? Are you assess the impact of the company business, individuals? How is your way of thinking that, again, goes back to is it aligned with the organization values? You can assess that. Coaching stakeholder or PO or a team, we do it a lot. And this one can easily be applied to video conferencing. So perhaps you just get any video on YouTube about, daily Scrum that has a lot of issues. And then as an interviewer, you can pretend that you are one of that person is asking coaching for the Scrum Master and see how he deals with that. If he's going to be more bossy and, okay, you are wrong in this, and or he's really been a coach to somehow to make you to find out what the problem is. So you can validate that. We deal a lot with presentations, workshops. We have to talk about Scrum. We have to talk about perhaps new techniques. Why not Kanban? Ways of prioritization. How clear and how good that person is delivering things and dealing with the questions. We can do that. It's quite easy. That's quite important. And mainly if your organization deals with people that have been working for decades there. I had to deal already with people working for more than 3 decades in the same organization. You know, I'm not lying. He worked with me there. So it's very hard to deal with them because, you know, they just say, I've been working here for 33 years. Who are you to tell me anything here? So you need to cope with that situation, and you can assess the skills, because if your organization, it's quite common, this kind of situation, perhaps you focus a lot of your assessment in this. You don't need to assess everything at the same weight, but perhaps you say, for me here, this one here is going to deal with a lot of people from business that are new to Agile, new to Scrum, and he has to know when to go with the flow and know when to push. Assess things like that, things that are very important to our organization. And this, I like these, and I do believe that we forget a lot, the Agile metrics. Even though this can have a bit of hard skills, we don't know whether we improved or not if we don't measure. If we don't measure, how do we know that we improved? We made a change. Okay, it's better because we think it's better. We should measure, and we can ask our Scrum Masters what they bring a situation and ask them how they would bring some metrics to that situation to assess if the change that we're going to do in the future is bringing value or not. If we don't manage what we don't measure. Think about that. This is just a few ideas, a couple of ideas. We can come up with way more ideas for that. And that's very important. I just mentioned, be clear in terms of the purpose and what your outcome expected. So we're going to assess your facilitation skills, or we're going to assess how you prioritize things, and how you evaluate, what criteria you're going to use to evaluate that person. So bring the rules to the game, very clear, because otherwise you can also bring a bad experience to that person. Do not forget to add some elements to bring some pressure in as well. But the fact of being clear and being very transparent, it's very important, a very good experience. I can say that. In one of the retrospectives that I did, it was very nice, the feedback that they gave me. By the way, I didn't pass that interview, but it was very valuable to me because they provided feedback. So they gave me the opportunity to improve. And they were very honest, fair with me. It was not offensive. It was very, very, very important to me, and I've been working with that. I didn't realize that I had to work in that skill, that soft skill, sorry, and I've been working on that, and they gave me the opportunity to improve. So then after the interview, we get that group of people, right? The HR and the team. Again, the team can be the Scrum team that the Scrum Master is going to work, or the team that will work closer to the Scrum Master. And then we can ask a few questions. How would you rate the competence of this candidate from 1 to 5? Did this candidate do anything that impressed you positively and negatively? Would you consider work with this candidate as your new teammate? Again, you can be assessing values. If he has he has here something that I didn't like, and I do believe that it's going to bring a lot of problems to the team because of X, Y, and Z. And again, should we make the candidate an offer? We are bringing to the table the chance that the team can own their destiny. They can make their future. And use the information that you gathered here. I would say that if the HR should focus on gathering this feedback here and provide feedback to the candidate. As I mentioned to me, they provided feedback and they were quite clear on why not and what I should, they value a lot and I should improve in my skills. And they even invited me to apply back in 9 months to a year because they would be happy in assessing me again and they would like to see me there again. But they gave me the opportunity to improve. Perhaps if there's anyone from the legal department here, perhaps if they will freak out in terms of giving feedback, there's a way of wording things that can be very constructive, and we can do that. Feedback, it's very important in our organizations. If we want to have agile organizations and Scrum, really, the benefits of Scrum, we have to have a lot of feedback. So use it in your favor. And everything that I mentioned here in terms of involving teams and so on, it goes back to these two words, very summary here, autonomy and accountability. How many times you just got someone to work in your team, perhaps you didn't agree with that person working in the organization, but you had to cope with that person because someone decided that you had to work with her. What is your level of collaboration when it was imposed? The same idea of the values that you mentioned. Oh, those are our values. Take it, leave it. The same thing as the people that we're going to work with. Just this is the person that you have to work with. I had an experience when I interviewed one person, and my feedback was negative. Saying no, we shouldn't hire it, and that person was hired, and it was brought to my team. What was my level of commitment in helping out that person to succeed? Even though I was part of the decision, that was very bad. However, the same thing applies if you were not part of the decision. If you help out to decide, I'm pretty sure that you're going to engage for that decision to succeed. If you said, oh, I want to work with you, I'm pretty sure that whenever you join, since day one, I'm going to help you out to succeed because I was part of that. And then we have this shared accountability. I'm responsible for my decisions. You create a sense of tribe. I'm using a lot your session, see? Again, Scrum teams are self-organized and cross-functional. Self-organization deals a lot with autonomy. So we are giving autonomy to our teams. One thing that I'm going to touch briefly that was very controversial when I did in Dublin, certifications. I don't have anything against certifications. Actually, I'm a certification hunter. I have many, and I'm pursuing the PSM3 now. But just be careful to use the certifications to assess soft skills. I'm more familiar with the Scrum.org assessment. The PSM3 perhaps deals a bit with your soft skills, assess your soft skills, but it still is different to see that person acting in reality, seeing real situation. So it's important to drive our studies and to help out to your hard skills. And with good hard skills, it's easier to develop your soft skills, but be careful to just take into account certifications. And just my final thoughts, a few things. I do see the HR as a supportive role, remove the silos and bring the HR work with tech, business, that also is a silo, but we should break these silos. And they have a lot of knowledge on how to interview and assess things. So bring this expertise to the teams and help the teams to assess and choose good candidates. As a Scrum Master or as a team member, you can influence your hiring process. So if your company doesn't do it, your organization doesn't do it right now, why don't you bring this idea and just say, let's do one experiment, one person. Let's hire one person in this way and see how it goes. We don't need to change the whole process without knowing the outcome. Experiment. Let's do it just for one candidate and inspect and adapt. These collaborative decisions, we are together deciding our future. And perhaps you have a question in your minds now is, but that process is expensive, isn't it? We are involved a lot of people in this decision process. And what I can say to you is this. Expensive will be a wrong choice to work with a person that doesn't fit your values, your organization, your teams, and it's quite hard to get rid of that person. The disruption that that person may cause to your team will be very expensive. Perhaps good people will leave because of a bad choice during your hiring process. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thanks. How to avoid team bias against candidates, non-traditional background. So if I understand the question is, perhaps the team is not mature enough in Scrum, and perhaps they will choose someone that is not a Scrum Master, a proper Scrum Master, perhaps is more a project manager. Is that correct?
Well, I can comment. So basically, what I'm sometimes struggling with my team, they say, we want someone who is a Lithuanian speaker, so they just disregard. It can be a good candidate from psychological and hard skills, but they say, well, or he comes from that university or whatever. This like bias against some lines in the profile. How do you deal with that? And they say, well, we don't want this person because he doesn't speak, let's say, Lithuanian.
I believe, and I'm sharing one of the experiences that I had. What they had is one company. Everyone had to agree. If one person had say no at the end, they wouldn't hire. But that was the policy that they came. I understand the point, but then you face a bit of a clash of, if you really want to have self-organized teams that will decide their own future, I would go in terms of, yes, you decide, and you take ownership of that decision. Perhaps don't have candidates and so on, or I don't know what the consequence of that. But at the same time, I would try to work with them to somehow experiment someone or open the policy, perhaps why we don't try this, what do you think? But the final word it would be their word. I would go for that. With the teams that I work, if they say, we want these, say, are you aware of that? You're accountable for the decision, it's not me. So let's go for it. But we are going to be accountable for the consequence of that as well. But I would definitely try to bring some experiments. So let's try to see one person that you believe that is very good to this. Let's assess, or how can I say? Let's experiment and bring someone that perhaps is from this university and see how it goes. But their final word decision should be theirs. They have to accept this experiment as well. If they say no, I wouldn't go for it.
That's what we do right now. The problem is that we want, for example, more diverse workforce, or they said, well, we don't believe that a girl can be a good Scrum Master, and then what do you do? If you see this is a perfect candidate for our gender, in their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to have more diversity from management level, but the team refuses. And this is changing the value and culture, and that's from what I said from my speech, is difficult.
It's difficult. Again, it's very hard. Perhaps a pilot project that we are hiring new people for that project, perhaps is it a matter of, as is a new team, just bring new people and try with that new team. Again, it's a bit tough to assess that. But I would lean towards their decision. Bring in pros and cons as well is important. So try to convince it's part of the process as well, to convince them to look from this perspective as well, guys.
And one more question.
how to give the candidate to feedback to a candidate if the problem was personally not skills, perhaps bad behavior. I imagine. It's always possible to word in a way that, again, it goes against, not goes against, but it doesn't match the values that we have in the company. If your company has values, and perhaps you can see, so you can bring up during where we were assessing this situation or this, during the whatever, the retrospective, you brought a situation that doesn't fit with our values. And we do believe that if you focus in not bossing people or being too straightforward to the point, perhaps the guy was harsh, you have to deal better or improve the skills in how to word things, give feedback without being too incisive. So there is always a way that you can give feedback to people without being harsh, even to the candidates. And if you make the rules clear since beginning, the person will probably accept it more. If you don't make the rules clear and it's unexpected feedback, then you may have even bad things from the candidate. But anyway, I would word somehow in a way that that person can improve. I always put in us supporting the person, say, look, we've realized that, and if you work on it, you could come back to us, and we would like to have you again.
Okay, our time is over. So thank you one more time.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
And please leave some comments to our speaker.